Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wallifornia Virtual Summit 2020. It's already time for the second MusicTech conferences of the day. We will speak about better music cities, how music can lead in urban recovery and building back better. With Shain Shapiro from Sound Diplomacy, Sandra from Norrköping City in Sweden, Jean-Christophe Peterkenne from Liège City in Belgium, Erika Shamaly, Austin City in the United States, and finally Tom Gray from Gomez and PRS for Music in the UK. Guys, the stage is yours.
Jerome. I wish we could all be there in person, but we are where we are. I'm joined by an incredible wealth of knowledge, to say the least. My name is Shain Shapiro. I run Sound Diplomacy. We work with cities and governments on music and nighttime economy policy and strategy. And really, this panel is, we're going to try to focus on being optimistic, right? We're going to try to focus on the glass being half full as much as we can. But I think the plan is to look at different perspectives from around the world and see what we can all learn from each other about how cities and urban governments can engage with our sector to help speed up recovery. So first off, I'd like maybe starting with Erika and Sandra, and then Jean-Christophe and Tom. Could you please introduce yourself a little bit about what you do in your respective cities or towns?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. My name is Erika Shamaly. I am the Music Division Manager for the City of Austin, the Economic Development Department. So we are a team of several that focus not only on live music venue development, but also artist development from kids to adults. Our goal is to make Austin not only the live music capital of the world, or get back to that, but also a music city in its own right, forging into the 21st century with looking at, that music city as a different thing than it has been in the past. And certainly this moment that we're in right now is going to help us define that together as a community, a global community. So thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Sandra and I come from Norrköping in Sweden. We're a UNESCO City of Music since 2017, and I'm the coordinator for our work here. So I also work for the Trade and Industry Department with the development of the creative sector. So these two things make me a coordinator of our work. We use music in our city development and to meet our challenges and opportunities.
JC, or should I go?
Yeah.
You go first. You go first.
So, my name is Jean-Christophe Peterkenne. I'm the General Director of the City of Liège in the field of strategy and development. And, I'm very disappointed to not host you physically in Liège during this summer because of the coronavirus, but I'm sure that I can host with all the citizens the Wallifornia MusicTech next year, and I'm in charge especially of the development of the city. We have since a lot of years more tourism, more students, more inhabitants, and we need to build new bridges, new languages between all this kind of people, and we think that music is a wonderful tool to create common language between all the kind of people that are in our city. That we try to do the best in that field.
I'm Tom Gray. I'm based in Brighton in England, which is probably one of the most musical cities in the United Kingdom. More musicians and artists than you could possibly ever wish for. I work for PRS for Music as a director, representing writers and as a collection society, and work with their foundation as well, who have systems for investing in regional areas around the country. I work as an advocate for artists and musicians, government level sometimes, and basically I'm very, very interested in protecting the talent pipeline and keeping money in regional economies, and hoping to develop, hoping to keep this generation, especially who I feel are somewhat in peril, in successful careers that are well funded, and mainly that their communities can benefit from that as well.
Great. Well, thank you all. I'm going to start with Tom, actually, focus on the artist. I think we should, in every conversation that we have now, we need to focus on artists first, and you are well, I'm not saying that everyone else isn't artists, but I'll just pick on you first.
Okay.
And yeah, do you think that the pandemic, in regards to how music is treated in urban environments in cities, do you think the pandemic created new issues, or it exacerbated issues that have been with us for a long time? And what do you think the role of artists in city development? Do you see this as a time that we can reorganize, reorder, rewrite that relationship based on what we've seen the last few months?
Coming to the first part of the question, I think, a lot of the problems that we have now are merely, very, very seriously exacerbated by the pandemic. I think a lot of the problems that we had were there before, especially I can speaking from the UK, we haven't had funding in our infrastructure on a regional level in anything like the level that was required in order to maintain our rooms and venues and theatres. But that I'm particularly interested in the funding model for all artists, and believe that we've moved to a streaming model for recorded music, which I think pulls money out of economies. I don't think it's good for national and regional economies the way that it's working at the moment, the big revenue share system where these big corporations just take all the money out. And we need to do something about that. And obviously COVID has thrown a massive light on that for me, because without live music, with severely diminished licensing remuneration because of businesses being closed down, we're left with just streaming, and streaming isn't particularly good. But coming to your second part of your question, which is what can artists do, or what should we, or sort of how should we look at this? For me, it's always the best example is always, our Prime Minister has been talking about Franklin D. Roosevelt a lot, and because he likes to fashion himself after everybody, Churchill, Roosevelt, anyone who's just better than him. And he obviously the New Deal is sitting there as this one incredible example, historic example of what you can do if you invest in your art and communities, and seriously invest and produce a whole generation of incredible American art as a result of that. And yes, somehow artists have to engage in this conversation in a way that shapes it so that policymakers take the issue very, very seriously and perceive it in terms of community building, in terms of economic building, in terms of just, let's call it happiness. We have to be very vocal about this, about the necessity for it, and it's hard for artists, but somehow we have to sound like the adults in the room as well.
Yeah, and Erica, I think in a way, from our perspective, the situations that you guys have faced is ground zero when South by was canceled, right? That was the first big event that impacted the music industry in relation to COVID. And can you take us through the last few months of your day to day? And you're faced with a multitude of issues, but Austin has always been one of the thought leaders in this regard. And I think it's because you have really tried to put artists first in everything you do. So I'm curious kind of where your head is at now, looking back on the last few months, and how you can see positivity in this into the future.
Right. Well, we have to be positive. I mean, it's obviously been extremely devastating. I mean, the closure of South by, my world, we're the first to close and we will be the very last to open. And what this has brought on was something that was already happening in very slow motion in terms of affordability, not only for venue owners to be able for their commercial space, but affordability for artists to live in Austin. We're a victim of our own success. We create a culture that everyone wants to, be a part of and to share in. And so what you basically do is you make it too expensive for the folks who made that culture possible. So we were in a slow motion process of venues closing, of artists leaving or at least moving outside the city and commuting. And so what the closure, what the pandemic has done, and with South by having to be canceled, was that all of a sudden warp speed, what was already happening in slow motion just happened in warp speed. So one bright side I could see out of this is that there is support, there's public support, private support for saving our music culture here, not only the venues, but creating a culture where artists can thrive. I mean, not only survive, but thrive, like raise a family here, maybe buy a home, whatever it is that, that dream that you have to want to, make a better place for your children. We were starting to lose that here in Austin. It's just too expensive. And so there is somewhat of a correction happening, but also this is help kind of put a light not only here on Austin, but in cities and countries around the world that depend on culture, depend on tourism, that depend on an experience. That experience right now is not happening except for online, like you were saying, with trying to pivot as best we can with live streaming. So, in our role with city government, we can only do so much. We're just trying to help with emergency relief at this point. Whatever we can do just to put more cash into pockets so that people can buy food, deal with healthcare. So we're seeing just a reverberation of things that were messed up, that were already broken, that are just laying bare of just how broken it was. And I'm not just talking about our music economy here or our live music venue infrastructure, but healthcare. How pretty much you see a big swath of the country already on the edge, and this threw them over the edge. So we have a lot of work to do, not only for our creative culture and for our musicians and for our live music venues, but for the social fabric that is lacking here in the United States, and taking care of people's basic needs beyond just trying to rebuild the infrastructure that we're losing. The one thing that we're seeing here, pre-COVID was, that slow motion. There were several people in line to rent those spaces if those live music venues failed, buy those homes if people had to move out. That has stopped. There is nobody in line anymore. Everybody's in the same boat. So I think we finally have an opportunity to rebuild in a way that is sustainable.
No, I appreciate ending on a positive. And let's turn it on its head and go to a country that has kind of done nothing in regards to COVID comparatively to others. It's not that you haven't been impacted by it, but different policy approach. And what is Sandra? What is Norrköping doing to recognize? Obviously, you're in a UNESCO City of Music status, but to safeguard the role of musicians in the city now compared to what you were doing 4 months ago?
Oh, there's a lot going on in Norrköping. As you said, in Sweden, we didn't have a complete lockdown, and this made problems that we could have never thought of for the creative sector, since everything pretty much goes on as usual, but our creative industries have gone from 100% to zero in just a couple of months. They were the first ones out, and it underlines, just like Tom and Erica told you, it underlines the fragile structure that we built on before. So what we need to do on a local level is actually following up the state government. They went out with $50 million for the industries like you have in London now. And the region and the municipality has followed up. So we, just like Erica said, right now it's about helping companies and artists and venues to survive and also to rebuild. So we're really focusing on the future and trying to build new platforms and new support structures and also development funding. So we really need to find new ways to work, because in Norrköping a lot of things grew organically, but that won't happen anymore. We need to help out. So as a city, I'd say we have a lot of work to do. And in Sweden, since there are not very many people here, and there are more funding than ticket sales for even the live music, I think we have a slightly different problem. But I think we see a lot of great innovative, creative ideas. So we need to enable them if we can facilitate them. So we actually spent a lot of time listening to the locals and our music community to see what they needed and help out, whether if they needed to use their competence in another way, we tried to help them. So our event managers actually run the logistics for the food internet sales, and they're doing great. So it's one way of using the competence right now in this time to start over later. So we also opened up all our venues, the municipal venues, for projects. So our venues aren't empty. We let them out for live streaming and projects like that. So I'd say we're doing good with digital concerts. I think our symphony orchestra is one of the few who actually came through their whole season. They live streamed it all. So,
No,
a lot's going on.
That's great. Yeah, it's you know, and it's interesting. You know, making buildings available is one thing, so long as it's done in a safe way. And I guess you know, JC, to follow up in Liège, you said, you know, music has been part of the city's kind of engagement strategy, how to bring communities together. And I want to talk about, you know, I guess what Americans call equity and what we in the UK would call social inclusion. And from a Liège standpoint, I know a lot of resources went into bringing to Wallifornia and the festival that you guys had aligned with Wallifornia. How has your strategy changed, and how have you, you know, continued to keep music as a priority, or as one of the many priorities? I think one of the issues is music falls down the, you know, the flagpole, so to speak, when we have issues of healthcare and other issues. What has been your story in Liège?
And so we, as a lot of countries in Europe, we knew a lockdown during 3 months, and it begins to we are beginning to come to real life, but not for the field of culture, and especially for music, because it's not finished. The lockdown is not finished for example, for the whole concert. And so it's a very difficult situation. And so the city decided 2 or 3 important ways. First of all, is to support the artists and the cultural and music structures that exist. It's very, very important. We have an opera, a philharmonic, a lot of festival, and we decided, despite the crisis, to keep the public support as the same level. And it's very important for the confident with the cultural and musical actors. So to keep the public invest. And in the second way, there is the structure, it's very important, institution and so on, but there is also the artist. And we decided, the cities and the artists together, to organize a call of project, and a lot of musicians answered to this call. And during all the summer, on 4 public spaces, the musician will take place on these public spaces. And for us, it's very important because it seems to, we want to give the opportunity to the citizens with musicians to see, to watch the real life is coming. The life is when the musicians are there, the life is there. And this program with musicians on public spaces is the symbol for us of the future. The link between citizen and music is really the symbol of, we hope so, the end of the crisis. And so it's a new program, and is to put the artists in the public spaces. It's the way we decided to take, and because this crisis show to us one thing, is that each citizen, each person need the other, to exist, himself or herself. And music could be the tool to make this link between the people. And with this special program during the summer with artists and with music in the public spaces, we want to make a great step to create this link. It's very important for us. And excuse me for my bad English,
No, it's fine. It's better than my French. And I think that, one of the things, just any sense of normalcy in some ways is a benefit to mental health. One of the questions I wanted to talk about equity. One of the challenges that we may face in the UK is, yes, we had a very welcome funding package announced, but the funding package may be directed to the people who are most experienced at engaging with these types of packages. And first come, first serve is not an equitable way to give money out. And so I wanted to, first off, Erica, other than money, other than funding, what is the city's role in making things better now for artists? Is it a whole-scale re-engagement of legal frameworks? Is it networking? I'm just throwing ideas out there. Like, let's say you don't have any more money. What can you do? What can Austin do to make things better? Or is it all about money?
One of the things that we've been working on, and where we do have control, is in how businesses can quickly pivot to a safer model, such as being outside. So typically Austin is quite, has a lot of regulations. We want to keep our people safe when it comes to building standards, things like that. And so it can be kind of a laborious process to deal with permitting to, like, say, switch your parking lot into a cafe. Well, we've just taken all of those barriers down and have a team in place through our Austin Center of Events, who typically have worked with South by and the Austin City Limits Music Festival to start pivoting all of these live music venues or bars to take their space from the inside and put it outside as best we can. Maybe it's closing down streets or sidewalks or allowing a parking lot cafe. Whatever we can do to help pivot that business model so that it's not only safe, but inviting, and it tries to take down as many barriers as possible for these small businesses that already are in the hole. I mean, they just have no revenue coming in. So, so we've got what we're realizing, and this is something pre-COVID that we already knew, is that the live music venue is that black box that's only open at night for a schedule of shows, and it's dark all the other times, is just not going to work. I mean, it wasn't working already. It just wasn't, you couldn't sell enough beer in 3 hours to pay for that exorbitant rent on top of ticket sales. So we already knew that we wanted to help these businesses pivot to a multi-revenue model, which could be a bar, a venue, a coffee shop, a restaurant, a cafe outside, whatever it takes in order to, okay, you can't do this now, but you can do this. So the city is working really hard beyond just the relief funding that we do have out there for small business and for artists. We're just trying to work as quickly as possible to help these folks pivot and try to take some of those costs away around permitting so that they can quickly do something safe. And then try to provide as much information as possible about how to do it safely, the resources needed in order to take care of your customers, your clientele coming in, and the artists that could be playing outside. We've also pivoted to, hey, yes, you can do a drive-in concert. We'll work with you to turn that around as quickly as possible and figure out a safe way to do it as quickly as possible. So yeah, it isn't just about necessarily money all the time. It's what can we do from a regulatory standpoint to help folks pivot as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I always, I joke in some of our work in the US that the biggest influence of city regulation is Kafka. And, and moving away from Kafka and simplifying things. But Tom, I wanted to pick up again on this issue of, I know equity and social inclusion are very big topics across all sorts of diverse issues, race and gender and all sorts. But one of the things that you argue is not equitable is the amount of money that remains in a community that's generated from the community's artists. In relation mainly to streaming and downloading, but primarily streaming. And I'm curious what you think. Again, we don't have any money on the table, but what could we change to get more money into artists' pockets now in this context?
Well, I mean, it's always the problem in the UK. They always say it's sort of leave it to the industry to solve for themselves, and of course, the industry is really a few global corporations and then a hell of a load of artists, and that's not that's a completely asymmetric negotiation. So you can't leave an industry like that to sort itself out. It's just patently obvious that you can't. So the problem, what do? You have to renegotiate the way that money is distributed. More money has to come out of that system and end up in the artist's pocket. And if you want to keep more money in your regional economy and you want to keep more money in your national economy, you have to find a way of doing that. I talk a lot about the user-centric payment system, which is a thing that can replace the revenue share system that already exists. I know the French government are very interested in this and are investigating it with Deloitte at the moment. Because the money, a subscriber's money should stay with the music that they listen to. I think the consumer is interested in that, but that doesn't solve completely the problem of remuneration. And at the moment, songwriters are historically in a very perilous situation. And as streaming advances and takes income away from radio, the existing framework in which radio pays money in Europe, rather, because obviously in America it's completely different. But the way that radio pays in the UK, that's what's kept songwriters kind of above the breadline, and as streaming eats into radio as it does, because on most levels it appears to be communication to the public, especially when it's playlists and it's choosing music for you. We have to sort of just rethink it. there's a way to do this. We can't at the moment. It's Sony and Universal both made both grossed over $1 billion each in the first quarter of this year, and are making what I think any economic analyst would describe as supernormal profits. And at a certain level, there's a certain point, I think, when you look at any economic system, and it appears that the businesses that are involved are merely rent-seeking and are not investing in their ecosystem on any broad level, that you have to start regulating. And obviously the EU has made some strides to doing that with the copyright directive, but unfortunately the British government aren't taking that up. So there's a lot of work to be done here in terms of the conversation about how we keep money here and how, there's a lot of us who are very, very worried. I mean, I know we want to stay positive, but we're very, very worried about young artists in this situation and losing at least a generation or more who just can't get off the ground, and having to turn to charity to get where they should be. There used to be development money from labels when I started. That's how we all got off the ground. You could get $5,000 out of a record label to start. Those deals don't exist anymore because record labels aren't involved in venture capital anymore. They just buy things that are already successful, which is why. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I want to bring it back to cities as well.
Sorry.
Because the problem, the music industry is so inherently complex by its own making, and I love the simple analogies because I'm a simple person, and I always think, and I wanted to bring Sandra, and I always think of the concept of a public park, right? We are all paying for a public park in one way or another, yet it's available to all of us. And some models are different. There's sections of it that could be fenced off to be rented at some times, and so on and so forth. But we all respect that the park is public, that the park is available to everybody, and that it is being paid for in one way or another. And in one of the countries that has historically invested in songwriters, I know that's a very simple very, very simple way of talking about a complicated problem, but one of them is Sweden. And, Sandra, taking on Tom's comments, do you think it's cities' role potentially to act as talent development supporters now if companies aren't doing it, or what, from your perspective as a country that has written a lot of pop music in the last little while, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a really good question because in Sweden, of course, I agree with Tom. There are funding for innovation and development missing. But as far as the city structure goes, we can help out in some things to keep them going. Like we cannot support one person, one artist, but we can create structures to help a lot of people. Like we have the free school of culture, we have free education for all genres, whether it's classical music or hip hop or reggae, whatever. And I think that's a start, and that's where we create space and funding for that very first concert. I think Tom's after that they get to tour a little bit within Sweden and in the region, get their first concerts on, and I think that's very important. So as a city, you should support the young, but also have some kind of support for the people that want to take the next step to the professional level. And then as a city, you could build networks. And right now we're working with the local community and national, international networks to create a platform to actually talk about how should we work in the future. We call it Future Echoes, and you could call it a showcase festival, but we hope it's a new platform to talk about how could we support, how could cities and regions support the music, not maybe industry, but the music community. because it gives a lot back and it's hard to measure its value. So I think as a city, you could also start paying absolutely the artists. So when we have funding that we have diversified, so we have funding for institutions, organizations, artists, and event managers separated in the support COVID-19 money funding right now.
So, it's again this creation of networks and platforms, which is again what our business is based on. It's the usage of platforms, and we got some questions. It's working, the system. If Jerome can hear us, good work. I've got three, but I'm gonna ask two. The first one to you, JC. I'm just gonna read it out because I think this for you as a public official. Is there a way normal citizens, what is the best way that normal citizens, in your minds, can support their local music and culture scene right now, if they're not directly involved with local government? What are you asking of citizens of Liège right now in terms of supporting music and culture?
Yes, I already mentioned that we decided to support the institution and also the artist, and to pay the artist to play on public spaces, to make the link with citizens. But I think, and I want to stress this way, we have to not forget the social role, the social tool of music. For example, we have a marvelous project with the Philharmonic Orchestra and the city. And, each week, some musicians go to the neighborhood of the city and decided to teach the music to 8 children in each neighborhood. And the children come from families that are very far from music. And it's a chance, an opportunity, unique opportunity for the young boy and young girl to practice music. And it could change the life of these young men and young girl. And so I think we need, especially in this special moment, the crisis and so on, we need to continue and I think to accelerate the social process of music, the social investment of music, and I think that's the role of the city. I think it's impossible on a high level to decide it a political way, as I mentioned, but the city that wants to use music to make bridge between people, I think to push on the social assets, the social issue, the social way of music, it's a good way to do. And we decided in Liège to push on this field, because we think that's really the role of music. And music is also a school of life. To play together is difficult. You must keep attention for the other. You must respect the other. And so it's also to learn how to grow, and to take the good way to grow in life. And so I think in this moment, in this crisis, and after this crisis, the social role of music, we want to push and to reaffirm that. Yes.
Yeah, if only every city manager spoke the way you spoke in the places I work in. And we have 5 minutes. We are on very tight time. We have one final question. I may start with Erica, but let's keep it quite short. And really, the question is: cities throw tons of money in sports, trying to get sporting franchises and so on and so forth. Is there anything we can learn from that, or is that?
Well, Austin understands about, again, experiences. So we do, but we don't have a major sports team here. We have major music events. And so Austin's a little different, although we are in the state of Texas that loves its sports. But the state does have a fund to draw large sporting events to Texas, as part of an experience, as part of the tourism industry. And so I think that, we have actually pivoted pretty well of understanding the tourism component of live music and culture, music culture, to bring people to Austin. And so that's kind of how, we had talked about paying artists. That's how we're kind of hoping to help pay artists more and more with our live music fund, which is funded by hotel motel taxes. Of course, we need people to go into the hotels and motels and pay for beds in order for that to happen. But we're teeing that all up so that we can, promote these experiences, whether it's sports or, Austin City Limits Music Festival. We're teeing it back up.
Yeah, and I think your model, which I'm sure anyone listening can learn about, is a model for the future. Is linking hotels to artist development. You're a leader.
We're basically the label. We're providing the marketing, budgets, going forward probably.
Yeah, and on that note, we have 3 minutes remaining, exactly, or 2 minutes remaining. So, I think that's kind of want to leave you guys to some final comments, maybe just a sentence or two. If you were the mayor of a fictional city or of Liège, would you, what would you be doing right now? What are the top 2 things that you would be doing right now to support the music and cultural economy? Tom?
I would be funding large-scale creative projects. That's what I would be doing. I'd be looking to develop work that when we get out of this can be given a venue, or can be given a stage. That's what I would be doing.
Right, and Sandra?
Oh, I agree with Tom, and I'd also get sustainable funding for structures, like we talked about before, and accessibility and diversity for all genres. So that would be my tip. And also not forget that music is a great way to achieve the Agenda 2030 goals, so start working on that.
Good point. I didn't include that in this talk. Good point. And Erica?
I agree. It's like that WPA program of the New Deal, is that we need to pay to put our artists back to work that benefits all of society. And there's a way to do that.
And the New Deal was 40% of GDP, right? I believe. Our Prime Minister has used 0.02% and called it the New Deal. And our host, JC, what else would you like to do that you're not already doing?
So I think I have already mentioned, but Liège is a city of 200,000 inhabitants, but with more than 160 different nationalities, and we need to create a common language, and I think music could be this common language. So that's
great. And that's a perfect way to end. So I was instructed to be right on time. If Gerald can listen to me, we are right on time at 2:44. So or 3:44 in Belgium. Thank you so much to our panelists, especially to Erica for getting up super early in Austin, because it's the afternoon for all of us. And thank you so much to Wallifornia for hosting this conversation. It's been an absolute privilege to be on the screen with all of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, over to you, Gerald.